Hi, I'm Metta Spencer, and I'm in Toronto, and my friend is in Poland, in Warsaw. So today we get to go to Warsaw and have a good conversation with an old friend, I think pretty old friend. This is Adam Koniuszewski, whom I've known for, I don't know, 10, 12 years, something like that.
At
Adam
least,
was the
yes.
chief operating officer or something for Green Cross International. And he now and has all along, since I've known him, lived in Geneva. But given the situation about the pandemics, the borders are closed, and he is in Warsaw, which is in a way his ancestral country, and he loves the place. His wife was born in Poland, Margo, and they got trapped there, sort of, in that the border closed, and they couldn't go back to Geneva, and so they've been there several weeks. So this is a good opportunity for us to use our Zoom technology and get back into a conversation about what you've been up to lately, which is of extreme interest to me. Hello, Adam.
Hello, Meta. It's great to be with you.
Great. Okay, tell me about what you're doing. You and Margo, in fact, Margo is the president of the Bridge Foundation.
I was the executive director of Green Cross, and you oftentimes mentioned about my finance work and called me the CFO of Green Cross. And yes, I was also, in many ways, the acting CFO because of my financial background. But in fact, I was the executive director. Many people called me the also acting CFO of the whole network.
We should actually, since we've mentioned Green Cross, we should tell people what it is.
Exactly.
Maybe what it was, because I was interested, because it was sort of the pet project of Mikhail Gorbachev.
Mm. But since you mentioned Mikhail Gorbachev, he is also the reason I joined the Green Cross, because I was born in Poland. I grew up in Canada. I came back to Europe. The first time with my family when we were allowed to return to Poland was after the fall of the Berlin Wall, and of course that was made possible thanks to a few great minds working together to make this happen, including well, of course, Mikhail Gorbachev. We're also in Poland very, very happy for the contribution of Pope John Paul II,
Mm-hmm.
and of course President Reagan at the time.
Mm-hmm. He made it pretty clear that he would not send troops in to suppress anything, and that gave the green light for the whole operation. That really did it, I think. Don't you?
Yes, absolutely. And so well, there's a very special place in my heart for Mikhail Gorbachev, and hence I was very happy to join the Green Cross when I got this opportunity, and to work with the man who changed the world in many ways.
Absolutely.
Will be remembered as one of the towering figures of history, and and so it was an honor to be able to work with him.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the Bridge Foundation, because I don't know enough about it.
Well, the Bridge Foundation, we started to essentially build a bridge between Switzerland, where we were based, where I was working on security, peace, and environmental issues, in short, global issues. And the idea behind the bridge was to raise awareness about global challenges, global issues with the business community in Poland at first, and then we started working with the students and youth. We worked also in Canada, where I have I always remained very active, and where I always maintained a wide network of contacts, and so we have been building relations between Canada and Poland, between Switzerland and Poland, and of course between Switzerland and Canada through all of this. And whenever I go on a trip to Canada, we use this opportunity in order to give talks at different universities, be it in Ottawa, be it in Montreal, be it in Quebec City or other places. And but we also invite students from Canada. And at the same time, these students and students from many other countries, including India, including Mexico, including all of these are PhD students, and 2 from Estonia. They use these visits to also discover the research centers in Poland. And I'm thinking of a very specific one, which is the ABB Research Center, that has developed the fast charging technology for electrical buses, and the kinds of buses that are being used in Geneva, but also in Montreal. Well, the technology has been developed by engineers in Krakow, and working for ABB, the multinational.
What you're doing, in effect, is transnational organizing. And
Absolutely, yes. Yes.
I have had some contact with John Pfeffer about this. John and I were acquainted during the Cold War, or shortly thereafter, in the Helsinki Citizens Assembly and other places in Eastern Europe. And he's at the Institute for Policy Studies in Washington. He has been writing an article about the fact that, at least his impression, that transnational organizing among progressive people like ourselves is lagging, and it's hard to do, and they mostly fail. He talks about the World Social Forum, whatever it's called, and Helsinki Citizens Assembly itself, and a number of other groups that brought us together. And I think that was extremely valuable when we had working contacts with each other every year or so, at least once a year together. But he says that while it's harder now for liberals or lefty types to make a go of these contacts, but that the right wing, people who say that they're nationalists, whose ideology is putting up walls, are the ones that are actually having a lot of success in transnational organizing. And I found that quite provocative thought. It hadn't occurred to me before. But he thinks that these right-wing populist leaders or movements in various countries actually have contact with each other and have some sort of, I don't know, coordination, I don't know what to call it, but people who are definitely not our type. And yet he thinks that they are riding high and cooperating with each other. Tell me, how does that idea strike you?
We in fact, we work with just about everyone, and we are not political as an organization. We do not take political positions. We have an approach that seems to be quite popular with everyone. I haven't yet to see any government that did not want to build bridges with other countries from the outside. So I think we've been quite popular with anyone who's been in power. And we in fact even are happy to work with both sides of the political spectrum, as long as we remain neutral and we don't end up in some sort of political mess. One of our programs is called the Diplomatic Roadshow. And because we have this huge network with universities and students, in fact, all of the largest student associations in Poland. So you would think this is very liberal, this is very, but we take these students and we bring them to Warsaw for a discussion with ambassadors from different countries. And we had these discussions with the ambassador of Australia, of Mexico, of Italy, of Estonia, of Japan, of South Korea. So it's been I'm forgetting some, but it's been very interesting. The discussions have been absolutely fascinating, and oftentimes are totally different from what we would have expected. And the students absolutely love it, and the ambassadors love it.
Okay, tell me about these young people that you work with. Politically, are they supportive of the government, Polish government, the current government?
Yes, so these are not necessarily topics that we discuss. You know, their political orientation or leanings
You
enter into
probably
this.
get a hint.
We
So
get a
listening
hint
to, you
because
must know what they think, even if they don't, if you are not asking them to tell you.
yes, no, we do. Some of them tend to be, um, well, actually, many of them tend to be very active politically.
I hear people saying that many of the young people today are, um, wanting some social changes and are not as conservative as maybe their parents. I don't know, and that I would imagine would vary a lot depending on what country you're in. So, since Poland has right now quite a conservative government, I just was curious about whether the Polish youth are supportive of the government.
Well, it's mixed. It's mixed. In Poland, young people say that their parents do not care much about pollution because they spend their lives in their cars and they never go outside. Whereas young people go outside and they find pollution to be a problem. So there is, beyond the political divide, there is a generational divide,
Mm-hmm.
and for different reasons. But young people being exposed to um, the burning of coal when they go out and play in the park are much more aware and concerned about the problem than their parents or oftentimes their grandparents.
And Poland is a very a place where a lot of coal mining goes on, and presumably the use of coal pretty heavily, right?
And that's one of the topics in the negotiations between Brussels and Poland. Poland has done a lot to reduce some of the worst, well, to close down some of its worst factories and to improve energy efficiency in in terms of its industrial base and so on. There's a long way to go. Poland is also reliant on imports from its neighbor Russia for much of its oil, and it's looking at the United States for LNG imports. So there are many factors at play here. Poland has also been very concerned about the energy security of Europe, whereas Germany is very happy importing, you know, having pipelines coming from Russia. So it's an interesting geographical and geopolitical discussion.
Am I hearing you say that Poland is more apprehensive about having pipelines coming in from Russia than Germany is?
Well, Germany is very happy to get Russian gas,
And Poland
and
presumably would not like that.
well, Poland is not so happy with this, no. And so Poland is working on deals with the United States in order to import LNG and working on its energy independence and would like to see energy independence in Europe from Russian imports.
Uh-huh. Okay, let's go back to the Bridge Foundation because you're doing something that I'm especially curious about. You know, this project Save the World that I've been playing with has a number of issues that we take as the big threats to humankind. We have 6, and one of them is cyber attacks. And I don't have very many people in a network of cyber experts. But so we don't have many conversations of this type where I usually call somebody once a week and have this kind of talk show, but
Mhm.
not too many on cyber attacks. But I'd like for you to say what it is you're doing about that with the Bridge Foundation.
Yes, absolutely. So we are working, and we're here in Poland for a project that we've been working on for close to a year now, and that is coming together. Was meant to be a competition between students from each of the 16 Polish regions on responding to a massive cyber attack. And each team includes 5 members, and each member is from a different faculty or a different specialty. One is, of course, an IT or a systems engineer. One is a lawyer. One is a business student. One is a military cadet. And one is a doctor or a student in a medical school. Now, these kinds of challenges, yes.
But in this scenario, do you explain to them from the get-go what kind of cyber attack this fantasy is about that they're supposed to be working on?
Yes, well, actually,
what's supposed to be happening, and who's supposed to be the aggressor? How does this
yes.
work out?
Well, look, in a massive cyber attack that impacts the whole country and that escalates, you can imagine that it is what we would call a nation-sponsored cyber attack or something of that scale. So it's not a hacker that would be able to put something like that together that will impact all sectors of your country, of your economy. You know, of course, the medical establishment. The economy is, of course, at the center of every major cyber attack, the government institutions. And so, yes, you can imagine it's a simulation, by the way. So, but you can imagine some of the massive cyber attacks that have taken place in Estonia, mm-hmm. or in Georgia, or in these other countries that, and the implications that they had. Well, it's that kind of a scenario that these students will have to respond to, and they represent a tiger team that is advising the prime minister and the government on how to respond. Initially, this was meant to be a 3-round competition, and so from 16 teams, we would end up with 3 teams, and everything was meant to take place live on the 23rd and 24th of April at the Warsaw Stock Exchange. So there's a reason why we're doing this at the Warsaw Stock Exchange, because imagine a publicly traded company is attacked, and then it has impacts, of course, on the economy, on its suppliers, on its employees, on the investors, on financial markets as a whole. And you talk to some of these investor relations experts, you talk to financial analysts, and you tell them about this, and they say, yes, well, this is interesting, you know, and they imagine that this is hypothetical. But in 2017, the Dow Jones Newswire sent out an information saying that Google was purchasing Apple for $9 billion. Now, Apple today is worth closer to $1 trillion, but this news went out, and it impacted trading for about 2 minutes, and it impacted the stock price. So this is not hypothetical. This is real. This is very, very real, and it has happened.
It was a hack.
It was a hack, absolutely.
Yeah,
and 2 minutes later,
they made a mistake or reported wrong. It was a real
deliberate.
It
was an attack. Yes, absolutely.
Make a buck from this.
Well, you know, it's a little complicated to see what was the intention, but yes, it was. And they also in the news piece they described the reaction of the staff at Apple and so on and so on. So it's actually quite sophisticated in terms of what they attempted to achieve. And these kinds of attacks happen all the time. It is estimated that for any business organization with more than 5,000 computers, which is any large organization, they are, well, 90% of them are continuously under attack. Continuously.
I know. I have a friend who was a cybersecurity executive, and he started off as a hacker, you know, learning how to break into things himself, mostly for fun. But at any rate, he says that we have no idea how much money they are actually successfully stealing from banks and other financial institutions, that the banks don't want us to know.
Yes,
but they
yes.
really are losing money from it.
And the reason we're doing this project, and the going back to the very, very beginning, what inspired me to do this is my mom was working on the first computers in Poland before we moved to Canada. So she was one of the very, very few and first and women working on the early days of computers. And back in Montreal, she worked for a number of companies, and she set up her own consultancy where I was one of the directors, and we were organizing events and supporting companies, governments, the military and others on what was called at the time information warfare, and that was in the 1990s. So today, computers are everywhere. It's estimated that already today we have 20 billion computers and connected devices around the world, and these numbers are going to continue growing. Cybersecurity should be our number one top priority in this kind of environment, and yet few people even know how to use to properly manage their passwords. So we've been working with young people on raising awareness about all of these questions, all of these issues, especially in these critical sectors, including the medical, the military, and so on and so on. Today, business, if you look at companies and the value of the different companies, the most valuable companies in the United States, you've got the Amazons, the Googles, the Apples. All of these are companies that are operating in that sector. It has become digital, and the value is in having access to our information, to us. And so the whole dynamic, I mean, in many ways, we have become the product.
Yeah.
Google and Apple and Facebook are making so much money because they have access to us, to our information. They know what we think. They know how to get whoever has something to sell to its customer, which is us. And so information has become so extremely valuable that anyone who controlling that information ends up being extremely rich.
Yeah. Okay. As I understand it, the bridge project that you're working on has, in a way, two different domains within it. You're working on how to handle intergovernmental attacks, a cyber attack run by one country against another, which is bigger than any one hack could do, the personal one. And then on the other hand, you're trying to do things like teach people to be more careful about their, what did you call it, their computer hygiene, not click on things that come in that are stupid to click on and so on. Let's talk about the former first, because, you know, what my impression is that whether we're talking about the either domain, so to speak, in any case, it's a lot easier to be an aggressor than it is to be a defender. So what could be done to strengthen the defense side?
We have launched this campaign, Don't Click on Shit. It's part of this awareness raising. Do not click on the link that you receive on an SMS where someone is sending you a message trying to get you to click on something, then it downloads something on your phone or on your computer, and then they take control of your computer. These kinds of attempts are everywhere. For instance, and many people are getting hacked. For instance, I received a message from one of my friends saying that he's in trouble, he needs a little bit of money. Can I please help him? I received this email, and so I gave him a call, and he says, yes, people have been calling me all day. Yes, I was hacked. Mm-hmm. But someone will actually respond and send him some money. And of course, it will be the wrong account.
And I probably get almost one a day, I would say, some outfit trying to get me to supply some information to them. And they always pretend to be my bank or some other very credible outfit. And it looks so convincing. It looks so plausible that I simply cannot tell. And invariably, I have an assistant that is much more sophisticated. And so I just send these to him and I say, is this real or is this a fraud? 95% of the time he says, come on, you can tell that this is a fraud. And he gives me some explanation of how I should have been able to spot it. But in fact, I've never learned. I'm not. Is there any kind of lesson that you can give people how to be pretty confident that you can tell the difference between um, one of these fishers and a real legitimate message from a legitimate organization?
Well, there are websites in Poland. There's one website called Fake Hunters. Whereas if you receive an SMS or an email, you go on that page and you see if it's part of the scams that have been reported. Then you go, in Europe at least, if you find something that doesn't look real or looks like an attempt to defraud you, you can go and report it to Europol, and then on their website, there's a link to the law enforcement agencies in your given country and a way to report it back in a way that is very easy and doesn't take you a lot of time. So you just send them this information and then they...
Do they ever catch these guys?
Well, it depends what you do by catching them. The typical website that is trying to defraud you, that is impersonating some organizations such as the WHO or the Center for Disease Control, is only up for a few days and then they disappear. So in a way, this is a race between the enforcement agencies and those that are trying to catch them, and those fraudsters and those malicious attempts to take advantage of those who are naive enough to believe in something that's too good to be true.
Mm-hmm.
But
Okay.
in fact, there are many other initiatives right now with the pandemic. People are scared. They're trying to buy masks. And some of these initiatives are actually entirely legal, so such as selling you in Switzerland a couple of masks for 10 francs. And a mask costs a few pennies. So selling it to you for 10 francs, it's not illegal, but it's a bit, if a bank did that to you, well, you could take legal action against them.
Mm-hmm.
So some of these attempts are actually even legal, and yet they're certainly not ethical.
Is there any way of developing the defensive mechanisms to be on a par with the obviously strong potential of these bad guys?
Well, Metta, you're absolutely right. Earlier, when you're defending, you have to defend 100% of the time. When you're attacking, you only have to be right once, and you win. And so, of course, it's very expensive to defend. It's very cheap to attack. And that is one of the reasons why state-sponsored attacks are so interesting for the governments attacking and are so difficult for the governments that are trying to defend. It's not a fair game, huh? You could say.
But it's not. We're not getting close to a solution either.
There are several platforms that have developed in the course of this pandemic. One is for medical facilities, hospitals, health professionals around the world. There's a group that today must include over 1,500 cybersecurity professionals around the world that are specifically focused on identifying cyber threats, phishing attempts, malware, focused on hospitals.
Mm.
And when they identify those, they look at the kinds of potential victims. They go and they take action in order to help defend them. And because they are everywhere, they are able to respond real time and provide a global response to a given threat almost immediately, which
These
is
given
just quite
threats
interesting.
presumably are just financial. They're just trying to rip somebody off. But I actually read something last year that gave me pause. This what's it called? Black Hat. There's a conference where the
Mhm.
good guy hackers get together and share information. And I think one of the things this fellow reported on was that there was a way in which a person could actually commit murder by hacking into the system. I don't know whether it's the lung heart machine or some other device that a critically injured person is hooked up to in a hospital. And you could go in and tamper with that and kill him. Uh, I don't think anybody has alleged that it's been done. But it's when you talk about hospitals, yeah, I guess if you really have an enemy, you want to watch out, I suppose, especially if your enemy is very good with hacking. Huh?
These vulnerabilities exist, and for example, one you could receive an email saying that your heart rate is going to start going up until so many bitcoins are received in this account,
Oh God,
and
really?
so this happens. This happens.
This
It
has been
has
done,
already taken place. Yes, yes, it has.
and they can do it.
They can do it. Same with insulin pumps. So the medical, well, companies like Medtronics, they are aware of this and they are working hard to resolve these problems.
Oh my word! Well, I thought I was posing a ridiculous a hypothetical situation, but if it's been done, that's yeah.
Well, not at all, but these kinds of problems happened in the UK and in many countries where a hospital had all of its files erased or unavailable until such and such amount was transferred into such and such an account. And people die because they cannot be operated. All the records have disappeared. And doctors, the students participating in our project, they know that they do not have access to a database. They cannot do their job to save a patient. So this is the
But
reality of today's digital world.
I mean, we're lamenting this situation, but I frankly haven't heard very much that sounds encouraging, as if there's an easy or even a foreseeable solution. Um, you're not making me feel better, Adam. I mean, I'm sorry.
Well, look, Metta, this is part of this incredible acceleration of progress that is made possible by digitalization. And all of the promises, from self-driven cars to smart cities where you have energy efficiency that is incorporated in every single electrical appliance. So this is meant to be this better world that we've all been hoping for.
Mm, yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Well, I don't think you did it to me, but somebody's doing it to me and doing it to you
Well,
too.
I'll tell you, Meta, the stock markets are betting on this revolution, and this is making some people extremely rich, and it's driven the economy, employment.
Let me change the subject a bit because you are in Poland. Tell me, what do you see there about the changing geopolitics of Eastern Europe, let's say?
Well, the situation between Poland and Russia continues to be very tense. We had the 10th anniversary of the um, Smolensk airplane crash
Mm-hmm.
um, just a few days ago, over Easter, and that's a reminder of this conflict. Russia still has the airplane, has kept the black box. Uh, the
Oh,
stories behind the
oh,
pilot having been drunk and so on turn out not to have been substantiated. They seem to have been, simply stories put out by the Russians. And so the Poles are not very happy about this situation, and they would like to clarify what happened to almost 100 people who were on that flight who disappeared on that day.
Oh, dear Adam, I had not heard that. And you've
Mm.
just given me a whole different perspective on things. Because I had assumed that really the Poles are just being paranoid, that the evidence was not that the pilot was drunk, but that, as I recall that story, and it's been a few years now, that the president himself insisted that the pilot do something, land where he's not supposed to, and he knew he shouldn't, and he was ordered to, and it was the president who was drunk or something. In other words, the guys who were making the pilot do the dangerous maneuver, which killed them, were Poles, and I have not heard this story about the Russians not releasing the black box. Now that's pretty damn suspicious, isn't it? Black boxes, I don't know what they have in them, but people will really want those black boxes after a crash, always. And if the Russians don't want to let them have it, that's not a good sign. Okay, I'm open-minded now. You opened me up that much anyway.
But
What do you
the
think?
government at the time had requested Russia to do the investigation, which is also a little bit odd because those weren't Russian who had disappeared; those were Poles, and so it's a bit it's a bit odd. Now, in terms of the bodies that were sent back to Poland and for the funeral and so on, they ended up opening up the coffins, and different bodies were mixed up in the different coffins.
If I were put in the position of having to collect the parts of bodies and put them in a coffin, I wouldn't do much better myself. I mean, I'm sure I'd make mistakes. So that's not what would bother me. What would make me puzzled, though, why wouldn't the Russians want to let the black box be examined? That is a really strange, because I hadn't heard that. And is that what carries the most weight in the debates, or is there even the discourse, let's say, in Poland? What do most people think? I thought the Poles were just not being realistic, that in fact, the plane did something it shouldn't have done. Everybody knew that it was a bad day and you're not supposed to land there. And the pilot knew it, but he had to do it anyway. And that it was an open and shut case. It wasn't anybody's intention. It was bad judgment.
I don't think we'll ever know what happened with that plane, but I think Poland would like to see the black box and would like to have its plane back.
Yeah,
okay. It's been 10 years.
Okay, so this is the issue where
this was done under the previous administration, and so you can understand that between the two, there's also a lot of bad blood, and of course the current government blames the previous government, and the previous government doesn't want to well, defends its actions, right? So it's difficult to see how you can find a way out of this situation.
Mm-hmm. Well, what else is there in the you mentioned a pipeline situation, or the desire of Poland to be more energy independent, or at least not to be dependent on Russia. Is this a symptom of long-standing enmity that has simply not been resolved and may never be resolved? Or is it founded in some realistic concerns that Russia may use or has tried to use its energy as for leverage in other ways? How realistic is the Polish antipathy toward Russia or guardedness about Russia?
Well, I think in many ways, the concerns in Poland are very practical. Poland does not want to be in the situation Ukraine was when um, the Russians have simply cut the gas supply. And so Poland wants to have a plan B, and the plan B right now is importing LNG from the United States, and hence the closeness between America and Poland on everything ranging from having an American military base in Poland, but also in Poland's role as uh, the the base to maintain security for all of Europe here. And Poland is carving itself a new place as the new economic engine in the region. Its economy has been growing extremely fast, much faster than any other countries. It's within Central and Eastern Europe, the most populous with 40 million people, close to 40 million people. It's bringing in a lot of Ukrainians to work, but also from Belarus and other countries. Because it's got full employment, well, people are drawn in, and the Poles move to higher paying jobs, and the Ukrainians take their other jobs. And so the population is growing this way. And in fact, the immigration to Poland is very high.
Now, this contradicts something that was going on, or my impression of 10 years ago. I was hearing about all of the Poles going to Britain and being plumbers or doing kinds of, trades work in Britain and doing a good job, being
Yes,
very
absolutely,
very good
absolutely.
workers. But and I think incurring some hostility among the British, competition or whatever. But now you're saying, I believe what has happened is that a lot of those guys have gone back to Poland and are doing very well there. And then other people are also now coming to Poland. There's been a shift in the inflow and outflow of the population. Is that right? Why?
Yes, Poland has been doing so well politically, economically, that is, that it needs more workers. The workforce is not sufficient. And so Poland has been doing a lot of work to bring Poles back to the country, but also has been promoting work for Ukrainians and other nationals from other countries to come and work here. So the immigration and the return of Poles from the UK, especially from the UK, because at one point there were 2 million Poles in the UK. Some of them were not, of course, the British were very happy to have Poles so long as they were not earning much and they were doing jobs that the Brits didn't want. But when the economy started to falter in the UK and the Brits were losing their jobs, well, they were no longer happy with the Poles around. So a number of factors, and the current crisis, the fact that many of these workers in the UK did not have the kind of medical care, the kind of social safety net that would allow them to stay in the country without working for a longer period of time, or having lost their jobs because they were not in these kinds of proper employment arrangements. All of these people are, well, the government welcomed them back to the country. So they organized special flights for all of them, and they're, Poland is very happy to have them back in Warsaw, in the regions, because Poland desperately needs the workforce, and especially with people that have learned languages and learned new skills abroad, they are very welcome in Poland.
Okay, but now Germany had also a need for more really immigrants, and they did it by accepting, at least maybe not everybody in Germany wanted them, but all of these Syrian and other immigrants from North Africa and so on. They accepted 1 million or so quickly. And Angela was very much in favor of making that possible. But my impression is that the right-wing populist governments, whether it's Hungary or maybe some of the other countries, have one of the big selling points for their campaigns is an exclusion of immigrants from the Middle East. Is that the case with Poland? Or if they need so many people, why shouldn't they be delighted to get lots of Syrian immigrants?
Well, I think there's a difference between the kind of immigration that a country like Canada had from Syria or from other Middle Eastern countries, because the Canadians would select who they wanted to bring in. And the Poles would have been very happy to select as well, but they were not so happy to just receive anyone. The Poles massively welcomed Ukrainians, and from other countries in the region. They did not want to have imposed on them so many Syrians or so many immigrants from other parts of the world. That would have more difficulty settling into Poland. Whereas with the Ukrainians, even if they don't speak Polish, they can learn relatively easily. And you know, there are many parts in Poland where it's difficult to speak Polish anymore. They speak Russian or Ukrainian.
Really?
Oh my God, it's unbelievable. If you go into restaurants in several parts of the country, you know, the people working there, they're not Poles. They're Ukrainians.
No, you're telling me something very newsworthy.
But if you think that you enter into a classroom as a Canadian, you think you enter into a Canadian classroom where you have a melting pot. Mm-hmm. You have all the colors. It's not like that in Poland. You know, this country was closed up until a couple of decades ago. So you don't see too many people of color. You see more and more, but you see few Africans in Poland.
But when they come, they don't necessarily switch over to using Polish language.
Well, sometimes they do. Sometimes they do. Mm-hmm. I find it surprising. I find it, I find it refreshing when I see Africans in the street.
Speaking Polish.
Speaking Polish, well.
Yeah. Well, so the government of, what's it, law and, what's it called? The government.
Law and Justice.
Law and Justice. Tell me what you think of them. I hear they're very right wing, and in what way are they very right wing, and why do you think that is so popular there now? And by the way, does it have any? Is there a sort of a kinship with the Trump people? That kind of right wingness, or is it a different kind of right wing?
Well, I would say that what makes them so popular is that they have put in place policies to help those that have been left behind during the previous 20 years since the fall of the Berlin Wall. They've put in place a program called 500 Plus. If you have a family with kids, for each kid you would receive a certain amount of money every month. If you have 2 kids, you have more. If you have more kids. So it's essentially, you know, the Polish population is becoming older and they want to encourage, you know, more families with more children, which is, you know, I think pretty sensible. This is what any government in this situation is doing. Now, this has been criticized as being populist, but, you know, quite frankly, I don't see what the issue is here. The other thing that they have done is they have forced multinationals, international multinationals, to pay their fair share of tax in Poland, which has upset, of course, all of the countries from the UK to France to Germany and to all the other ones. But that has been extremely popular with, you know, those, not the expats who live in Poland or not the executives in large corporations making big salaries, but with the average person in Poland. So those were and closing these loopholes has allowed them to generate massive tax revenues in order to fund these social programs. And so the financial situation of Poland and its budget has been excellent as we entered into this crisis, Poland had one of the best budgets in Europe in order to be able to respond to the crisis in terms of a financial package to help business and others. So I think Poland has been doing quite well. And when this government came into power, the international press has criticized it so much, said the economy would go down the drain. The rating agencies have downgraded Poland. And after a couple of years, they upped their ratings again because the country's done very well. So I'm not criticizing or promoting, but I'm looking at objectively what this country has done, and must say it's good from a foreigner's perspective. I love coming to Poland. It's safe, it's clean, it's nice. The economy is doing well. People are working. Everyone's happy. Expats who live here find that this is a hidden gem and that their friends can't stop coming and visiting. I mean, this country is great. Now, there are protests in the streets. I think there are fewer and fewer of them. The police is not stopping them, is not beating anyone. In fact, it's protecting them. You know what? If people want to protest, they can. I mean, this government is not stopping them. So I find them funny because I find this a little bit odd, but hey.
Yeah, okay. I get it. And I have to agree with you that of all the countries I have ever visited, I've had more really delightful experiences with Polish people helping me than I have ever seen elsewhere. People, if I want to get directions, they'll lead me there. They give up in the days when you had to stand in line for a taxi at a certain place, they give up their position so I could take their taxi. All of these. I must have a dozen wonderful stories to tell about ways in which people have done extraordinarily, unusually kind things that really would not have been expected of anybody. And they, in Poland, where I don't know any place in the world where I think those Poles are really nice people.
They are nice people, but they like fighting with each other. And as much as in Canada, during this crisis, I see everybody working together, both in Quebec and in Ontario, and you like them or you don't like them. Well, in Poland, everyone's fighting all the time, and I find that very sad.
Yeah.
So we will have, I hope, this conference towards the end of the year. Poland is hosting the Internet Governance Forum. So that's a massive conference organized by the United Nations once a year, and it has been for the last decade plus. This year it's coming to Poland in November, and I hope that we will be able to present what we have done entirely online. And as I said earlier, these teams with the doctors, the lawyers, the IT experts, the military, and so on, working together is globally, it's a first. It has never been done. You have these types of projects with IT experts and lawyers, little teams that work together, but so comprehensive and so wide-ranging. So they understand all of this, and so they are ready to provide us with an answer or with a response that is not simply, the result of their own imagination, but is grounded in the kind of reality that we have.
Okay, I think I've misunderstood a little bit what was happening. I figured that they were competing and sending in a pre-planned proposal for each team. But no, you're going to have an event where they get together and everything happens right there in one day, at the stock exchange. Is that right? The competition takes place one afternoon, say, or something like that, and they enact various games. How do you do that?
Initially, the idea was that over 24 hours, they receive, a case, the description of the attack, and it escalates. And there are 3 rounds in the competition, and each round there are teams that are eliminated until there's the final. And so every time there are new elements that are being added in. Now it's going to be different because we have to take it all online.
Mm-hmm.
They will receive a business case that will describe the attack. They have to respond, and they have a certain amount of time to present their response to a jury. Everyone is going to be in separate locations, and everybody is going to be hooked together through an online teleconferencing system that Microsoft is helping us put together.
Now, who are the judges? They're going to be sitting there listening to what these different teams propose as responses to this cyber attack.
Exactly.
And how do they judge which guys are really promising, creating promising solutions, and which ones are not so smart?
So every jury team is also, the members on every team represent each area of this, just like the teams, right?
What they hope to get is some good ideas for if something really happens, they will have gotten some innovative proposals from these teams. Some teams will have suggestions that might not have occurred to anybody else.
That's one of the objectives, absolutely.
I'm just comparing it in my own mind with another approach to disasters. I'm on our team of people on the project to save the world. There's a man named Ron St. John, who is an epidemiologist, and he was in charge of Canada's response to the SARS epidemic. I mean, he was in charge of what Canada did to try to control that situation. And he now is promoting something he calls the incident management system, where before, just as a general practice, every society should get ready for disasters. And the incident management approach is something that was invented by firefighters. And it was a matter of trying to set up a coordination between firefighters, ambulances, the water maintenance system, all of the different agencies or institutions of the government, or even private industries that might be called upon in an emergency, whether it would be the SARS epidemic or a forest fire or a flood or a train going off the tracks and spilling chlorine gas, any disaster. So they plan these things ahead of time, and they assign roles to people. And they're not the same roles that they play. They're people who occupy positions within government or within these agencies, but in this incident management approach, they're not going to play their regular roles. They take them out and put them in they even say sometimes they should be working out of a different office from where they normally are working, because other people are going to come out with them with their regular expectations, whereas their actual responsibilities are redefined in different ways for the duration of the disaster. So the idea of incorporating and planning ahead so that the people from various, I don't know whether they include lawyers too, but you've got even people in the law profession, how would you handle this and so on. Bringing these people together and bringing their expertise into alignment on how you would handle a forest fire or whatever, pandemic. Yeah, sounds similar.
This is a wonderful example, because what we're doing is a fire drill for this massive cyber attack, and that's exactly it. It's role playing. What would you do if you were advising the Prime Minister, and you have all of the tools that the real experts would have at their disposal? You are able also to consult others consult your professors or anyone else in order to build the best case.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the advantages of having this online. If we had been in a conference room environment, they would not necessarily have all of these resources at their disposal, but now they do. And this is a real life situation. The pandemic has forced this upon us. And if we had been in the disaster situation in Poland, it would not have been possible. But because Poland has managed this crisis so well, we are trying to take this one step further. And even during a crisis, we are able to do this fire drill for, well, let's say we had a cyber crisis at this time, what would we do?
It's wonderful. I hope you'll keep me posted on the outcome. And
Absolutely.
yeah, absolutely. And maybe we can find a way of sharing it with the others who want to know more. Okay, this has been fun. We've gone over our time. You take care. Give my good wishes to Margo. Sorry I
Will
couldn't.
do.
All right.
Big
Bye-bye.
hugs. Bye-bye.
This conversation is one of the weekly series Talk About Saving the World, produced by Peace Magazine and Project Save the World. Please visit our website at tosavetheworld.ca, where you can sign the Platform for Survival, a list of 25 public policy proposals that, if enacted, would greatly reduce the risk of 6 global threats to humankind. Come back next week for another discussion of a serious global issue.